The morning fog clung to the tobacco fields like a burial shroud. Samuel Pierce had worked these Virginia acres for 18 years, every dawn identical to the last, every sunset marking another day survived. His hands, scarred from cotton and tobacco, moved with mechanical precision as he gathered kindling near the slave quarters. "Samuel, get that wood to the main house, now!" Overseer John Whitmore's voice cut through the humid air. Samuel didn't look up. He never looked up. In 18 years, he'd learned that invisibility was survival. The Riverside Plantation stretched across 300 acres of Virginia's most fertile soil. Master Richard Thornton had inherited it from his father, along with 47 souls he counted as property. The plantation ran like clockwork, brutal, efficient, merciless. Samuel was 36 years old, though he looked 50. His back bore the crosshatch pattern of old whippings, a map of defiance punished and spirit broken. Also, everyone believed. "You deaf, boy?" Whitmore stepped closer, his riding crop tapping against his boot. "No, sir." "Going now, sir." Samuel's voice was barely audible, eyes fixed on the ground. As he walked toward the main house, a grand two-story structure with white columns that gleamed in the early light, Samuel passed the other slaves beginning their day. Children no older than 7 headed to the fields. Women prepared breakfast in the outdoor kitchen. Men sharpened tools for the day's labor. None of them spoke to Samuel. They hadn't for months. Inside the main house, Master Thornton sat at his mahogany desk, reviewing ledgers. His wife, Catherine, arranged flowers in the parlor. Their daughter, Elizabeth, practiced piano in the music room. The sounds of civilization built on the backs of the enslaved. "Father, when will Uncle James arrive?" Elizabeth called out. "This afternoon, my dear. He's bringing potential buyers from Charleston. We need to make a good impression." The Thorntons were hosting a gathering, other plantation owners, merchants, politicians, a celebration of their prosperity. Riverside Plantation was the jewel of the county, and Richard Thornton never missed an opportunity to display his success. Samuel delivered the wood to the kitchen, where cook Mama Ruth stirred a pot of grits. "You eat today, Samuel?" she whispered. He shook his head. "Take this." She handed him a biscuit, her eyes filled with concern. "You getting too thin, too quiet." "I'm fine, Mama Ruth." "You ain't fine. Nobody fine in this place. But you different lately. Your eyes got something in 'em I ain't seen before." Samuel pocketed the biscuit and left without responding. By noon, the plantation buzzed with activity. Overseer Whitmore rode between the fields, his horse's hooves thudding against the packed earth. The second overseer, Thomas Green, supervised the tobacco drying sheds. Both men carried pistols and whips, symbols of their authority. "Whitmore!" Green called out, wiping sweat from his brow. "You seen that new boy from the Jackson property? The one we bought last month? The one they call Moses?" "Yeah, I seen him. Why?" "He's been talking, putting ideas in heads. We might need to make an example." Whitmore grinned. "I do enjoy a good example." That afternoon, as promised, Uncle James arrived with his entourage. Carriages rolled up the oak-lined drive. Well-dressed men and women emerged, their laughter floating across the plantation like birdsong. Samuel watched from near the stables, where he'd been ordered to tend the visitors' horses. He studied their faces, the casual cruelty in their smiles, the way they looked past the slaves as if they were furniture. "Samuel!" Whitmore shouted. "Stop standing around like a fool. Get these horses watered." "Yes, sir." As evening approached, the main house glowed with candlelight. Music drifted through open windows. The guests dined on roasted pork, fresh bread, and wine imported from France. In the quarters, slaves received their rations, cornmeal and salted pork, barely enough to sustain. "Something's coming," old Jacob whispered to the others gathered around a small fire. "I can feel it in my bones, like before a storm." "Don't speak foolishness," warned Mama Ruth. "We got enough trouble without you stirring up worry." But Jacob wasn't wrong. The air itself felt different. charged, waiting. That night, after the guests had retired to their rooms and the plantation settled into uneasy sleep, Overseer Whitmore made his final rounds. He checked the locked gates, the guard dogs, the slave quarters. Everything appeared normal. He never made it back to his cabin. The next morning, when Whitmore failed to appear for dawn roll call, Master Thornton sent Thomas Green to investigate. Green found Whitmore's cabin door open, swinging in the breeze. Inside, signs of a struggle, overturned furniture, broken glass, but no Whitmore. His horse remained in the stable. His pistol sat on the bedside table. His boots stood by the door. John Whitmore had simply vanished. You're hearing this incredible story from 1823 Virginia. If you're in the car, at work, or relaxing at home, leave in the comments where you're listening from. And if this story already has you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button. Within an hour, the entire plantation knew. Panic spread like wildfire. Master Thornton assembled every slave in the main yard. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. Someone here knows what happened to Mr. Whitmore. I want answers, and I want them now. Silence. You think you can defy me? You think you can hide from justice? More silence. Thornton's eyes swept across the assembled faces, 47 pairs of eyes, some terrified, some blank, some carefully neutral. His gaze landed on Samuel Pierce, standing at the back of the group, hands folded, head slightly bowed. Something about Samuel's stillness caught Thornton's attention. Too calm, too composed. You, Samuel, step forward. Samuel moved through the crowd, his footsteps deliberate. Where were you last night? In my quarters, Master, sleeping. Anyone confirm that? I sleep alone, sir. Thomas Green stepped closer, hand on his pistol. This one's always been strange, Mr. Thornton. Keeps to himself, never talks. That's not a crime, Thornton snapped, but doubt crept into his voice. He dismissed the slaves and ordered Green to organize a search party. They combed the plantation, the fields, the woods, the riverbank. They found nothing. John Whitmore had disappeared without a trace. As night fell again, fear settled over Riverside Plantation like a suffocating blanket. The guests, spooked by the mysterious disappearance, cut their visit short and departed before sunset. In the slave quarters, whispers circulated. Maybe he ran off with some woman. Whitmore. That devil loved this place too much to leave. And where is he? Nobody had an answer. Samuel Pierce sat alone in his small cabin, a structure barely large enough for a cot and a wooden box for his few possessions. He stared at the wall, his expression unreadable. On the floor beside him lay a leather whip, John Whitmore's whip, recognizable by the brass studs embedded in the handle. Samuel picked it up, running his fingers along its length. 18 years of scars, 18 years of silence, 18 years of waiting. His lips moved, forming words no one could hear. One down. Outside, the Virginia night pressed close, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant thunder. Somewhere in the darkness, the plantation held its breath, sensing that John Whitmore's disappearance was not an isolated incident. It was just the beginning. 3 days passed with no sign of Whitmore. Master Thornton hired local men to search the surrounding counties, offered a reward for information, even contacted the sheriff in Richmond. Nothing. The plantation continued operating, but the rhythm had changed. Thomas Green, now the sole overseer, worked the slaves harder, as if brutality could restore order. He carried 2 pistols now and slept with a rifle beside his bed. They know something, Green told Thornton over breakfast. I can see it in their eyes, especially that Samuel. You have proof? Just a feeling. Feelings don't solve mysteries, Thomas. Find me evidence. But evidence proved elusive. Samuel maintained his routine, waking before dawn, working until dusk, speaking only when spoken to. He'd become even more invisible, if that were possible. Other slaves gave him wide berth, sensing something they couldn't name. Only Mama Ruth dared approach him. Samuel, People talking, saying you got something to do with Whitmore going missing. People say lots of things, Mama Ruth. You listen to me, child. Whatever you thinking, whatever you planning, I'm not planning anything. I'm just trying to survive, same as always. But Mama Ruth saw through the lie. She'd known Samuel since he was 18, bought from a plantation in North Carolina. She'd watched him endure beatings that would have killed other men. She'd seen the light slowly die in his eyes, replaced by something darker. "You remember what happened to Big Thomas?" she whispered. "They caught him trying to escape, made an example, hung him from that oak tree for 3 days before he died. That's what they do to rebels, Samuel. That's what they do to anyone who fights back." "I remember." "Then you remember what happens to everyone who loved him. They sold his wife, his children, scattered them across 3 states. That's the price of resistance." Samuel looked at her directly for the first time in months. His eyes were calm, clear, utterly cold. "Some prices are worth paying." That night, Thomas Green made his rounds with extra vigilance. He checked every lock twice, counted every slave, inspected every shadow. His paranoia had grown with each passing hour. Around midnight, he heard something, a sound from the tobacco drying sheds. Rats, probably, but he had to check. Green approached the shed, pistol drawn. The door stood slightly ajar, which was wrong. He always locked these doors himself. "Who's there?" His voice cracked slightly. No response. He pushed the door open with his boot, gun raised. Inside, darkness. The smell of curing tobacco filled his nostrils, sweet and thick. "Show yourself!" A movement to his left. Green spun, fired. The shot echoed across the plantation, startling awake everyone within half a mile. He'd hit nothing but air. "Damn it!" He fumbled for his second pistol, hands shaking. Another sound. Behind him now. He turned again, but something struck his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Pain exploded up his arm. "What the—" A figure emerged from the shadows. In the moonlight filtering through the shed's gaps, Green saw a face he'd seen 1,000 times, but never truly noticed. Samuel Pierce. "You—" Samuel moved with shocking speed. His hand clamped over Green's mouth, cutting off the scream. The overseer struggled, but 18 years of fieldwork had made Samuel strong in ways that didn't show. "I want you to understand something," Samuel whispered, his voice still that same submissive monotone he'd used for 18 years. "Every scar on my back you put there. Every day I went hungry, you decided that. Every moment of my life you controlled." Green's eyes bulged with terror. "But you made a mistake. You thought breaking a man's spirit meant killing his memory. You thought if you beat us enough we'd forget we were human." Samuel's grip tightened. "I never forgot." "Good if you're as invested in this story as I am in telling it. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any secret history stories. Turn on the notification bell to be notified when we post new videos." What happened next in that tobacco shed? No one would ever know with certainty. But when the slaves emerged for morning roll call, Thomas Green was nowhere to be found. His pistols lay in the shed, both of them. His hat rested on a barrel of tobacco. But Thomas Green had vanished just as completely as John Whitmore. This time, Master Thornton didn't gather the slaves. He locked himself in his study with his brother James and the sheriff, a portly man named Douglas Webb, who'd made the journey from Richmond. "Two men don't just disappear," Sheriff Webb said, studying the plantation map spread across the desk. "This is either a coordinated escape attempt or something else entirely." "My overseers wouldn't flee," Thornton insisted. "They had good positions here, good pay." "Then what's your explanation?" Thornton had none. "I want every slave questioned individually," Webb declared. "Someone saw something. Someone knows something." They started the interrogations that afternoon. One by one, slaves were brought into the main house, questioned and released. Most claimed to know nothing. Some suggested Whitmore and Green had fought and killed each other. Others proposed wild animals or accidents. When Samuel's turn came, He walked into Master Thornton's study with the same shuffling gait, the same downcast eyes. "Name?" Sheriff Webb asked, though he already knew. "Samuel Pierce, sir." "How long you been here?" 18 years, sir." "You know anything about the missing overseers?" "No, sir." "Where were you 2 nights ago, around midnight?" "Sleeping in my cabin, sir." "Anyone verify that?" "No, sir. I sleep alone." Webb studied Samuel's face, looking for tells, for nervousness. He saw nothing but exhausted submission. "You ever have trouble with Whitmore or Green?" "Trouble, sir. They ever beat you? Punish you?" "Yes, sir. When I deserved it, sir." The answer was so perfectly meek, so completely broken, that Webb dismissed him with a wave. "Next." But as Samuel left, Thornton's brother James leaned forward. "That one's lying." "How do you know?" Thornton asked. "I've owned slaves for 30 years. I know what broken looks like, and I know what pretending looks like. That man is pretending." "He's been this way since I bought him," Thornton protested. "Quiet, obedient, never a problem." "Exactly. Never a problem. Never a complaint. Never a visible emotion. That's not a broken man, Richard. That's a man who's been waiting." "Waiting for what?" James didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, looking out at the slave quarters. For his moment. That night, Thornton doubled the guards. He armed 4 trusted slaves with clubs and set them to patrol in pairs. He kept all the doors to the main house locked and loaded his rifle. In the quarters, the atmosphere had shifted. Fear, mixed with something else now, a dark excitement, a sense that the impossible was happening. "2 overseers gone," young Moses whispered to old Jacob. "When has that ever happened?" "Hush your mouth," Jacob hissed. "You want to hang? I want to be free. Freedom's a dream, boy, and dreams get you killed." But Moses wasn't the only one dreaming. Across the quarters, slaves who'd lived in terror for years felt something new stirring. Hope was too strong a word, but possibility, maybe. Samuel remained apart from these whispered conversations. He sat in his cabin, alone as always. On the floor beside him, a small collection of items. Whitmore's whip, Green's hat. A third object he'd recently acquired, Master Thornton's ledger, stolen from the study during his interrogation. He opened the ledger, running his finger down the columns. Names, values, prices paid for human beings. He found his own entry. Samuel Pierce, male, age 18, purchased from Henderson Plantation, North Carolina, $850. $850. That's what his life had been worth. He tore the page out carefully, folded it, and placed it in his pocket. Then he stood, stretched his back, and prepared for night 3. Outside, the guards patrolled with nervous energy. Master Thornton paced his bedroom, rifle in hand. Catherine Thornton prayed in her sitting room. Elizabeth Thornton cried quietly, frightened by the tension gripping the household. None of them slept. But by morning, another person had vanished. Not an overseer this time, but James Thornton himself. His bed was empty, his room undisturbed except for one detail. His boots stood neatly by the door, just like Whitmore's had. And carved into the wooden bedpost, barely visible, were 2 words: "Never forgot." Sheriff Webb returned with 6 deputies, all armed with rifles and grim determination. The disappearance of a prominent plantation owner's brother had elevated this from local mystery to regional crisis. "I want this entire plantation searched," Webb ordered. "Every building, every field, every inch of woods within a mile. Bring in dogs if you have to." Master Thornton looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His hands trembled as he poured whiskey at 9 in the morning. "It's him," he muttered. "That's Samuel. It has to be him." "We have no evidence," Webb began. "I don't need evidence. I can feel it. Arrest him. Question him properly." "By properly, you mean torture?" "Whatever it takes." Webb shook his head. "I'll question him again. But if we have no proof, we have no case. Even for a slave, there are procedures. The search began in earnest. Deputies tore through the slave quarters, overturning belongings, interrogating anyone who might have seen anything. The dogs arrived around noon, bloodhounds that sniffed around Whitmore's cabin, Green's shed, and James Thornton's bedroom. They found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no trail to follow. Samuel was brought into the study again, this time with his hands bound. "Where are they?" Thornton demanded, abandoning any pretense of calm. "Where are who, master? Don't play games with me. Whitmore, Green, my brother. Where did you put them?" "I don't know what you mean, master. I've been in my cabin at night, working the fields by day. Same as always." "Liar!" Thornton lunged forward, but Webb held him back. "Mr. Thornton, control yourself." "Control myself while this animal destroys everything I've built?" Samuel's expression never changed. The same mild confusion, the same submissive posture, but his eyes, there was something in his eyes that made Webb's skin crawl. "Samuel," the sheriff said quietly, "if you know anything at all, tell us now. We can protect you." "Protect me from what, sir?" "From whoever's doing this." "Doing what, sir?" "Men go missing sometimes. That's what you told me when my wife disappeared. Remember, when Master Thornton sold her to a plantation in Georgia, I asked where she went, and you said people go missing sometimes, that it's just how things are." The room fell silent. "That was different," Thornton began. "How?" Samuel's voice remained soft, but steel ran through it now. "How was it different? My wife vanished. My children vanished. You made them vanish. But nobody searched for them. Nobody brought dogs. Nobody cared. That's not the same thing at all." "No, master." "You're right. It's not the same, because they were innocent." Webb stepped between them. "Take him back to his cabin. Keep him under guard." As Samuel was led away, Webb turned to Thornton. "When did you sell his family?" "Years ago. I needed capital. They were valuable assets." "Did he resist?" "No. He just stopped talking for a while, became even quieter. I thought he'd accepted it. Or," Webb said slowly, "he started planning." Are you enjoying this journey through Virginia in 1823? Share this video with that friend who loves real and emotional stories. And leave a comment. Did you know about this story? That night, despite the guards, despite the dogs, despite every precaution, another disappearance occurred. One of the deputies, a young man named Carter Mills, assigned to watch the western fields. His rifle was found leaning against a fence post. His hat lay in the dirt. But Carter Mills was gone. By sunrise, panic had fully set in. The remaining deputies refused to patrol alone. Several slaves seized the opportunity to escape into the woods, figuring chaos was their best chance. Others barricaded themselves in their cabins, terrified of becoming collateral damage. Catherine Thornton packed bags for herself and Elizabeth. "We're leaving," she declared. "This plantation is cursed." "We can't leave," Richard protested. "If we abandon it, we lose everything. We'll lose more than property if we stay. We'll lose our lives." For once, Thornton couldn't argue. He saw the same terror in his wife's eyes that he felt in his gut. But before they could depart, Samuel requested an audience. The boldness of the request itself shocked everyone. Slaves didn't request audiences. "He wants to talk?" Webb said. "About what?" "He says he has information," reported the deputy who'd taken the message. "Says he knows where everyone is." Thornton wanted to refuse, but curiosity won out. They brought Samuel into the study one final time, the entire remaining household present. Webb, 2 deputies, the Thorntons, even Mama Ruth, who Samuel had specifically requested. "Well?" Thornton demanded. "Where are they?" Samuel looked around the room, his gaze settling on each face in turn. When he spoke, his voice had changed. The submissive tone was gone, replaced by something harder, clearer. "I want to tell you a story first, may I? I don't have time for... Please, master, indulge me. It's relevant. Webb nodded. Let him speak. Samuel took a breath. 18 years ago, I was sold away from my mother in North Carolina. I was 18 years old. I'd never been more than 10 miles from the plantation where I was born, but I'd heard stories about freedom, about the North, about places where men like me weren't property. This is pointless, Thornton interjected. Let him finish, Webb insisted. I arrived here in 1805, young, strong, hopeful, still. I thought maybe this place would be better. It wasn't. John Whitmore took pleasure in breaking new slaves. He said it was about discipline, but it was really about power. He enjoyed it. Samuel's jaw tightened. The first time he whipped me, I'd been here 3 days. My crime, looking at him wrong, 20 lashes. I couldn't work for a week, couldn't sleep on my back for a month. Slaves need discipline, Thornton muttered. I met a woman here, Sarah. She was kind, gentle. She saw something in me worth loving, though I'll never understand what. We married, in the way slaves marry, without papers or permission. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Samuel's voice cracked slightly. For 6 years, I had something worth living for, something beyond survival. I worked harder than any man on this plantation, never complained, never resisted. Because I had them, and they needed me to stay alive. Where is this going? Thornton demanded. 1811. You needed money. Expansion, you called it. So you sold them. My wife to Georgia, my son to Mississippi, my daughter to South Carolina, 3 different directions. I begged you, got on my knees and begged. You know what you said? Thornton was silent. You said, they'll be fine, probably better off. Then you threatened to sell me too if I didn't get back to work. That's how business... I became very quiet after that. Everyone thought you'd broken me. Even Mama Ruth thought I'd given up. But I hadn't. I just realized something important. What? Webb asked quietly. That justice doesn't exist for men like me. That the law doesn't protect us, that God doesn't save us, that mercy is a luxury only you people can afford. So I stopped waiting for justice. I started planning something else. The room had gone deathly still. You asked where they are, Samuel continued. Whitmore, Green, your brother, Deputy Mills. I'll tell you, they're everywhere and nowhere. They're in the tobacco fields they worked us to death in. They're in the woods where runaways were hunted. They're in the river where discipline sometimes went too far. You killed them, Thornton whispered. Did I? Or did this plantation kill them? Did this system? Did you? That's confession enough. Webb moved toward Samuel. Wait, Samuel held up his hands. I'm not finished. You want to know how? The details. Against his better judgment, Webb nodded. Whitmore first. He was easy, arrogant, predictable. He made the same rounds every night. I waited in his cabin. When he returned, drunk as usual, I was ready. He never even saw me. I used his own whip. Poetic, don't you think? Catherine Thornton gasped. Green was harder. He was suspicious, armed, but he made a mistake. He came to the shed alone. Men like him always think they're invincible. They're not. And my brother, Thornton's voice shook, asleep in his bed, so confident in his safety he didn't even lock his door. I stood over him for 5 minutes before I acted, watching him dream. Wondered what men like him dream about. Profit, power, the screams of people they own. You monster. Monster! Samuel laughed bitterly. I'm the monster, not you, not this place, not the system that lets you buy and sell children. Where are the bodies? Webb demanded. Bodies? Samuel tilted his head. Sheriff, have you ever worked a tobacco plantation? Do you know what we do with waste? With things that need to disappear? The lime pits, the burning fields, the deep river mud? Dear God, Catherine whispered. God had nothing to do with this. This was all human, all earthly, all built on the foundation you people laid. Webb drew his pistol. Samuel Pierce, I'm arresting you for murder. Of course you are, and you'll hang me, and you'll think justice is served. It will be. Samuel looked at Mama Ruth, who had tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Mama, for what comes next, for what this starts." "What does that mean?" Thornton demanded. Samuel smiled, a real smile, the first anyone had ever seen from him. "You think I'm the only one who's been waiting, the only one who remembers, the only one who's been watching and planning and biding time. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm not the disease. I'm just the symptom. This plantation, every plantation like it, is built on a foundation of terror. But terror works both ways. You taught us that. You taught us very well." "Take him away," Webb ordered. "Lock him in the shed until we can transport him to Richmond for trial." As the deputies grabbed Samuel's arms, he looked back at Thornton. "You asked where they are. I told you everywhere and nowhere, but I'll tell you where I'll be. I'll be in your nightmares, every plantation owner's nightmares. A reminder that slaves remember, that patience doesn't mean acceptance, that silence doesn't mean peace." They dragged him out. The room remained frozen in the wake of his words. "We need to leave," Catherine said again. "Now, today." This time, Thornton didn't argue. But leaving wouldn't save them from what Samuel had set in motion, because that very night, as the household prepared for departure, fires began appearing across the county. Not random fires, but deliberate ones, burning in a pattern that stretched from plantation to plantation. Samuel's confession had been more than words. It had been a signal, and all across Virginia, slaves who'd been waiting, watching, planning, received that signal loud and clear. The terror was just beginning. The fires painted the Virginia sky orange. From the window of his locked shed, Samuel watched the distant flames with satisfaction. 3 plantations burning simultaneously. The Henderson property to the north, the Marshall estate to the west, the Jackson plantation to the south. Coordinated, planned, executed. Outside his prison, chaos reigned. Sheriff Webb shouted orders to deputies scrambling to respond to multiple emergencies. Plantation owners arrived in panicked groups, demanding protection, demanding answers, demanding the kind of control they'd always assumed was their birthright. "How many?" Thornton asked Webb, his voice hollow. "Reports are still coming in. At least 3 major fires, possibly more. And it's not just fires. There's been violence, overseers attacked, property destroyed, slaves escaping in organized groups." "This is insurrection," James Harrison, owner of the Marshall estate, said. His clothes were singed, his face blackened with smoke. "This is what we've always feared. It's starting." "We need military support," another owner declared. "The militia, maybe even federal troops." Webb shook his head. "The nearest militia is 2 days away. By then we'll all be dead," Harrison interrupted. "This is coordinated. Someone's organizing them." All eyes turned toward the shed where Samuel was confined. "He planned this," Thornton said. Even knowing he'd be caught, he planned it. The confession wasn't remorse. It was a signal. "Then we end it now." Harrison pulled out a pistol. "We end him, and we end the signal." "You can't just execute him without trial," Webb began. "Watch me." But before Harrison could act, a new commotion erupted. One of the deputies ran into the yard, gasping, "Sheriff! The quarters! The slaves are gathering!" Everyone rushed to see. In the open space between the slave cabins, dozens of enslaved men and women had assembled. No weapons visible, but their presence itself was a kind of resistance. Slaves gathering without permission, without orders, in a show of collective will. Mama Ruth stood at the front of the group. "What is the meaning of this?" Thornton demanded. "Get back to your quarters immediately." "No," Mama Ruth said simply. The word hung in the air like thunder. "What did you say?" "I said no. We're done following orders, done pretending, done being quiet." "You dare?" "I dare," she cut him off, "because we got nothing left to lose. You gonna sell my children? Already done. Gonna whip me. My back already got more scars than clear skin. Gonna kill me, then do it. But we're done being scared." Behind her, the assembled slaves remained silent but present. a wall of human resistance. "This is mutiny," Harrison hissed. "Webb, arrest them all." "On what charge?" "They're just standing there." "The charge is existing while rebellious." Webb looked at his small force of deputies, then at the dozens of slaves, then at the burning horizon. "We don't have the manpower," he said quietly. "Then we make examples." Harrison pushed past Webb, pointing his pistol at Mama Ruth. "Starting with her." The shot never came. The story is reaching its most intense moment. If you're enjoying it, give it a like and share it with someone who needs to know these secret stories from history. Young Moses stepped in front of Mama Ruth, arms spread wide. "You want to shoot someone? Shoot me. I'm young, strong, worth more money. Shooting me costs you more." Harrison hesitated, and in that hesitation, the balance of power shifted. More slaves emerged from the shadows, not threatening, not violent, but present. They formed a protective circle around Mama Ruth and Moses, a human shield built from bodies that had always been considered property, but were now claiming personhood. "This is how it starts," Thornton whispered. "This is how we lose everything." In his shed, Samuel heard the commotion. He smiled in the darkness, not because violence was coming, he'd had enough of violence, but because resistance was blooming, and resistance was its own kind of freedom. A deputy appeared at his door, young and terrified. "Samuel Pierce?" "Yes?" "The sheriff wants to move you out of the county for your safety." "My safety?" Samuel almost laughed. "You mean for his safety? Keeping me alive keeps the peace, doesn't it? Kill me, and all those people out there have nothing left to fear." The deputy didn't respond, but his silence was confirmation. They moved Samuel in the dead of night, a small wagon escorted by 4 deputies. The plan was to get him to Richmond, where a proper jail could hold him until trial, but the road between Riverside Plantation and Richmond was 25 miles of dark forest and isolated farms, perfect for an ambush. It came at mile 7. Figures emerged from the trees, not slaves, but poor white farmers, men who'd resented the plantation system for different reasons. They'd heard about Samuel's confession, about the fires, about the uprising spreading across the county. And they decided to take matters into their own hands. "Hand him over," their leader demanded, a grizzled man named Cyrus Porter. "This man is under arrest," Webb said, trying to sound authoritative. "He's going to trial. Trial's too good for him. He killed white men, respectable men. That demands immediate justice. That demands mob violence, you mean? Call it what you want. Give him to us, or we take him." Webb looked at his 4 deputies, then at the dozen armed men surrounding them. The math was simple and brutal. "I can't do that. Your choice, Sheriff, but we're not leaving without him." In the wagon bed, Samuel sat quietly, hands still bound. This was always a possible outcome. Lynching was as common as rain in the South. He'd accepted it as a probable end to his story, but then another group appeared, emerging from the opposite side of the road. Slaves, led by Moses and Mama Ruth. "You want him?" Moses called out. "You go through us first." Porter laughed. "You're outnumbered and unarmed, boy." "Maybe, but you shoot us, and every plantation from here to Richmond burns tonight. You think those fires earlier were bad? They were just the beginning. You're bluffing." "Am I?" Moses stepped forward, fearless. "You know what's happened tonight. 6 plantations on fire, 24 overseers dead or missing, 300 slaves free and heading north. This county is already lost. The only question is how much blood gets spilled before sunrise." The standoff stretched into uncomfortable silence. Neither side wanted to be the first to escalate, to turn this confrontation into massacre. Finally, Sheriff Webb spoke. "Gentlemen, I have a proposal. Mr. Porter, you and your men go home. Moses, you and yours do the same. Samuel Pierce remains in my custody, and I give you my word as an officer of the law, that he will receive a fair trial in Richmond." "Fair trial?" Porter spat. For a slave who murdered white men? The law is the law. If we abandon it, we're no better than animals. The law never protected us, Moses countered. Never protected our families, our lives, our dignity. Why should it protect him? He pointed at Porter. Because, Webb said carefully, if we all decide the law doesn't matter, then only the strongest survive. And in that world, none of us are safe. It was a fragile argument, but it was enough. Porter and his men withdrew, muttering threats. Moses and the slaves melted back into the forest, but not before Moses made eye contact with Samuel. A look passed between them, understanding, respect, solidarity. The wagon continued toward Richmond. In the back, Samuel finally spoke. "Why did you protect me, Sheriff?" "I didn't. I protected the law. The law that allows slavery, that protects men like Thornton. The law that prevents mob justice. The law that, imperfect as it is all we have between civilization and chaos. You think we're not already in chaos?" Webb didn't answer. They reached Richmond as dawn broke, the city just waking. The jail was a stone building, solid and grim. They locked Samuel in a cell designed for the worst criminals. "Your trial will be in 2 weeks," Webb told him. "I'd recommend you pray." "I stopped praying years ago, Sheriff. Prayer is for people who still believe in mercy." "Then what do you believe in?" Samuel looked at him through the bars. "I believe that every system built on cruelty eventually crumbles. Maybe not today, maybe not in my lifetime, but eventually. That's what I believe." Webb left him there, locked in darkness, awaiting a trial whose outcome was already determined. But Samuel didn't despair, because even in that cell he could feel it. The tremor of change, the first cracks in a foundation that had seemed unshakable. The fires still burned across Virginia, the slaves still whispered, the resistance still grew, and Samuel Pierce, the quiet man who'd waited 18 years for his moment, had become a symbol of something larger than himself, a symbol that terrified every plantation owner in the South, a symbol that couldn't be killed, even if the man himself died. Outside the jail, the city continued its normal rhythms. But underneath, in the places where the enslaved gathered and the oppressed whispered, everyone knew something fundamental had changed, and there was no going back. The courtroom in Richmond was packed beyond capacity. Plantation owners, abolitionists, journalists, curious citizens. Everyone wanted to witness the trial of the slave who'd confessed to killing 4 white men and sparked what newspapers were calling the Virginia Terror. Samuel Pierce sat in chains at the defendant's table. He'd lost weight during his 2 weeks in jail, but his eyes remained clear, focused, unrepentant. Judge Marcus Whitfield presided, a stern man in his 60s who'd built his career on maintaining order and respecting precedent. To him, this trial wasn't about justice for Samuel Pierce. It was about restoring confidence in the system. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Gerald Hastings, an ambitious man who saw this case as his path to higher office. His strategy was simple: portray Samuel as a monster who'd betrayed the kindness of his masters and murdered innocent men. The defense was provided by a court-appointed lawyer named Thomas Aldridge, a young attorney who'd recently moved from Pennsylvania. He'd seen slavery up close for the first time in Virginia, and it had disturbed him deeply. But he also knew defending Samuel was career suicide. "The prosecution may begin," Judge Whitfield announced. Hastings stood, his voice carrying to the crowded gallery. "Gentlemen of the jury, this case is simple. Samuel Pierce, a slave owned by Richard Thornton, murdered 4 men in cold blood: John Whitmore, Thomas Green, James Thornton, and Deputy Carter Mills, all pillars of their community, all with families, all with futures. And this creature," he pointed at Samuel with theatrical disgust, "extinguished those lives without mercy, without remorse." Samuel remained impassive. "The defendant has confessed. There is no question of guilt. The only question before you is this: Will we, as civilized men, tolerate such barbarism? Will we allow slaves to murder their betters without consequence? Or will we send a clear message that law and order prevail in Virginia? Hastings called his witnesses. Richard Thornton, who described Samuel as deceptive and calculating. Sheriff Webb, who recounted the confession. Other plantation owners who testified to the terror that had gripped the county. Each testimony painted Samuel as a dangerous anomaly, a broken system's worst nightmare. Then Aldridge stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Thornton," he began gently, "you owned Samuel Pierce for 18 years, correct?" "Yes." "In those 18 years before these alleged crimes, how many disciplinary problems did Samuel cause?" Thornton hesitated. "None." "None? 18 years without a single incident? That's remarkable. He was good at hiding his true nature." Or perhaps he had no true nature to hide. "Mr. Thornton, during your ownership of Samuel, did you sell his wife and children to different plantations?" "Objection!" Hastings jumped up. "Irrelevant." "Your Honor," Aldridge countered, "I'm establishing motive and mental state." "Overruled." "Answer the question, Mr. Thornton." Thornton shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, I needed capital for expansion." "You separated a man from his entire family, sent them to 3 different states, correct?" "It was a business decision. A business decision. Tell me, Mr. Thornton, when you made this business decision, did Samuel object?" "He expressed displeasure." "Expressed displeasure? Can you be more specific?" "He begged me not to do it." A murmur ran through the courtroom. "He begged. And what was your response?" "I told him it was already decided." "And after that?" "He became very quiet, stopped talking much, worked harder, actually. Worked harder. So a man loses his entire family, and your assessment is that he worked harder." Aldridge let the words hang. "Mr. Thornton, in your 18 years owning Samuel, how many times was he whipped?" "I don't keep count. Estimate. Dozens of times, maybe more. That's normal for discipline." "Dozens? And who administered these whippings?" "Primarily Overseer Whitmore. John Whitmore, the first man to disappear." "Curious timing." "Objection. Withdrawn. No further questions." The trial continued for 3 days. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of Samuel's guilt, the confession itself, physical evidence from the scenes, testimony from multiple witnesses. But Aldridge, though fighting a losing battle, began introducing something new into the record: context. He called Mama Ruth to testify. "Mrs. Ruth, may I call you that?" "Mama Ruth is fine. Mama Ruth, you've known Samuel Pierce for 18 years. Tell the jury about the man you know." Hastings objected repeatedly, but Judge Whitfield allowed the testimony. "Samuel is the kindest man I ever met," Mama Ruth said, her voice strong despite her fear. "Never raised his voice, never showed anger, even when he had every right. He loved his family more than anything in this world. What happened when they were sold? He died inside, not his body, his spirit. I watched the light go out of his eyes. He became a ghost walking around in a man's skin." Did he ever speak of revenge? Never. He spoke of nothing. That was the problem. He stopped being human, just worked and slept and worked and slept until the overseers started disappearing. Then I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Purpose. So what did you think of this story about 1823, the shocking case of the slave who turned a plantation into a scene of terror? Leave your opinion in the comments. Did you subscribe to the channel? No? Then subscribe now. We have new stories every day here at Secret Stories. See you in the next video. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. Judge Whitfield sentenced Samuel to death by hanging, to be carried out in 1 week's time. Samuel showed no reaction. "Do you have anything to say?" the judge asked. For the first time during the trial, Samuel stood and addressed the court directly. "I do, Your Honor. May I speak freely? Whitfield nodded, curious despite himself. You've found me guilty of murder. I don't dispute the facts. I killed those men, but I want this courtroom, I want this city, I want this country to understand something. He looked around the crowded room. You call me a murderer, but what do you call men who separate families, who buy and sell children, who whip and break and destroy human beings for profit? Are they not murderers too? Are they not guilty? That's different, Hastings began. How? Because you wrote laws that say it's legal? Laws written by slaveholders, for slaveholders, to protect slaveholders. Those laws make it right. The law is the foundation of civilization, Judge Whitfield said sternly. Then your civilization is built on a rotten foundation. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not in your lifetime, but one day it will collapse. And when it does, history will judge which of us was the real criminal. Are you finished? Whitfield asked coldly. Almost. I want to say one more thing. To everyone who owns slaves, who profits from slavery, who looks the other way while human beings are treated as property, I'm not unique. I'm not special. I'm just the first one you caught. But there are thousands like me. Tens of thousands. Waiting, watching, remembering. You can hang me. You can hang 100 like me, but you can't hang us all. And we will never stop fighting for freedom. Never. Silence filled the courtroom. Take him away, Whitfield ordered. The hanging was scheduled for the following Friday, to be held in the public square as a warning to other slaves. In the days leading up to it, Richmond descended into tension. Armed guards patrolled the streets. Slaves were locked in their quarters at night. Plantation owners traveled in groups for safety, and the newspapers published Samuel's final words, spreading them across Virginia, across the South, across the nation. Abolitionists seized on them as proof of slavery's evil. Slaveholders condemned them as dangerous incitement, but everyone read them. On the morning of the execution, thousands gathered in the square. Some came for justice, some came for spectacle, some came to mourn. Samuel was led to the gallows in chains. He looked calm, almost peaceful. Sheriff Webb stood nearby, looking troubled. Any last words? The executioner asked. Samuel looked at the crowd, at the faces of plantation owners celebrating his death, at the faces of slaves forced to watch as a warning, at the faces of ordinary people trying to understand what they were witnessing. Remember, he said simply, remember this day. Remember what happens when you push human beings beyond their limits. Remember that silence is not acceptance and patience is not surrender. Remember that justice delayed is not justice denied. It's justice stored up, building pressure, waiting to explode. The hood was placed over his head. May God have mercy on your soul, the executioner said. If there's a God, Samuel replied, he'll have to answer for this world he made, not me. The trap door opened. Samuel Pierce died on October 15, 1823, at approximately 10:30 in the morning. But his story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, slave rebellions increased across the South. Small acts of resistance became more common, tools broken, work slowdowns, escapes. Plantation owners installed more security, hired more overseers, increased punishments, but fear had taken root. The certainty that had once defined the master-slave relationship had cracked. 5 years later, Nat Turner led a rebellion in Virginia that killed dozens of white people and led to massive retaliation. Historians would later note that Turner had heard about Samuel Pierce, had been inspired by his resistance. 20 years later, Frederick Douglass escaped slavery and began his crusade against the institution, carrying Samuel's message that silence was not acceptance. 38 years later, the Civil War began, fought partially over the question of whether human beings could own other human beings. And 40 years after Samuel's death, the Emancipation Proclamation freed millions of enslaved people, including, had they survived, Samuel's wife and children. The Riverside Plantation never recovered. Richard Thornton sold it in 1825 and moved north, haunted by nightmares. The new owners struggled to maintain control. By 1840, it had been divided into smaller farms. Mama Ruth lived to see the Emancipation Proclamation. On the day it was announced, she was 73 years old. She gathered the former slaves from what had been Riverside Plantation and told them the story of Samuel Pierce. "He died so we could see this day," she said. "Never forget that. Never forget what he did and why he did it and what it cost him." Young Moses, by then an old man himself, added, "And never forget that he won." They killed his body, but his message lived. His resistance inspired. His courage showed us the way. They erected a simple wooden marker near where Riverside Plantation had stood. Samuel Pierce, enslaved, resistant, free. Over time, the marker weathered and fell. The plantation became farmland, then suburbs, then parking lots. The physical evidence of Samuel Pierce's life disappeared, but his story persisted, passed down through generations. It became legend, then myth, then footnote. Until 200 years later, historians began excavating the truth, piecing together court records, newspaper accounts, oral histories, recovering the story of a man who'd remained silent for 18 years, then spoke with violence when words had failed, then spoke with words at his trial when violence was done. A man who'd lost everything, yet found the strength to resist. A man who'd been called property, yet claimed personhood. A man who'd been sentenced to death, yet won immortality. Samuel Pierce's story is uncomfortable. It doesn't fit neatly into narratives of peaceful resistance or redemptive suffering. It's violent, troubling, morally complex, but it's also true. And truth, however uncomfortable, demands to be remembered. Because Samuel was right about one thing: the system he fought against was built on a rotten foundation. And it did eventually collapse, just as he predicted. Not because of one man's resistance, but because of thousands, millions of people who refused to accept their dehumanization, who fought in ways large and small, who passed down stories of resistance from generation to generation. Samuel Pierce was one thread in a larger tapestry of resistance, but his thread mattered. His silence mattered, his violence mattered, his words mattered, and most importantly, his refusal to be forgotten matters. That's why we remember him now, 2 centuries later. Not to celebrate violence, but to honor resistance. Not to excuse what he did, but to understand why he did it. Not to make him a hero, but to recognize his humanity, the humanity that slavery tried to destroy, the humanity that Samuel Pierce fought to preserve, the humanity that in the end could not be killed, even when the man himself died on that October morning in Richmond. His last word was, "Remember," and so we